afternoon and welcome back. I'm Jean Hammerman, Deputy Director with the Center for Creative Land Recycling. It is my great pleasure to introduce the co-organizers of the California Land Recycling Conference, California's own Department of Toxic Substance Control, DTSC. With us today is Maryam Tasnif-Abassi, Brownfield Development Manager, and Peter Garcia, Division Chief. I will briefly introduce Maryam and Peter and then turn the program over to them to share resources and the innovative ways DTSC is working to support land recycling and safe redevelopment of environmentally impacted properties. For the past 11 years, Maryam has focused on community revitalization through the redevelopment of underutilized brownfield properties. As the Southern California Brownfields Coordinator, she has facilitated agreements with developers, property owners, and government agencies, leading to successful environmental restoration and reuse. Additionally, she coordinates the State Response Program grant, which provides funding to government agencies and nonprofits for brownfield assessment and planning. Peter Garcia has served in several capacities within DTSC, dating back to 1989. He has been a project manager, our first line supervisor, and the branch chief for the school's evaluation brownfield outreach program. He is currently the Southern California Division Chief for DTSC's site mitigation program. In this capacity, he is responsible for managing site investigation and cleanup operations in Southern California. I'm thrilled to present and turn the program over to Peter and Maryam.
Thank you, Jean. Today, what we're going to talk about is what's new at DTSC. Again, I'm Peter Garcia, Division Chief for Southern California, and I'll be talking a little bit about some general updates, and then I'll turn it over to Maryam to talk a little bit about what's going on with our Brownfields program. So I'd like to just highlight a couple of our management changes here. Meredith Williams has been confirmed as our director, so she's a permanent position with us now at DTSC, as well as an addition to our DTSC management team, Naylene Cobell. She is our new Northern California Division Chief. This is just a slide with contact information for each of our branch chiefs in our site mitigation program. And as you can see, we have branch chiefs in our 4 regional offices. This is our Brownfield team, again, led by Maryam Tasnif-Abassi, who is our Brownfield Development Manager for our state of California, for our department. And we have Brownfields staff in each region ready to assist you to act as a liaison for our Brownfields and voluntary cleanup questions. So a little bit about our adjustments that have made due to the pandemic. Most of our work is continuing as normal. Staff are continuing to work on projects and all their other work activities. Our offices are open. However, most staff are continuing to work at home. And the offices are open for essential services, such as if you need to go to the file room and review files or drop off any information or reports and such. Our offices have never closed during the pandemic. They have always been open. However, most of our staff have been working at home and will continue to work at home for a while until further notice. One other change that has occurred is we have to take into account safety of our staff in the field when field work is occurring. And we have not stopped field work. In fact, we're continuing to do field work, in particular with brownfield sites, because brownfields often involve development, which involves construction of housing and other development activities, business development activities, and those have been designated as essential. So we are continuing to support those activities. And so our staff are continuing to go out in the field. The changes that we have made with respect to field oversight have to do with our health and safety plans. Our health and safety plans submitted by our stakeholders that we work with are being funneled through our industrial hygiene staff, and recommendations are being provided to staff for conducting field work in a safe manner during these times of COVID-19. So those are the main changes with respect to the pandemic, but most of the work, as I mentioned, is ongoing and it's business as usual, with the exception of, as most people are probably experiencing, as we're doing here today, a lot of the communication is going on over the internet through Microsoft Teams or Zoom or other types of meetings where we have this virtual conversation. One of the main things, I'm going to talk a little bit about the attenuation factor study and the latest on vapor intrusion with respect to DTSC's activities. As many of you may know, our supplemental vapor intrusion guidance, our joint guidance with the Regional Water Quality Control Board, was sent out for public review about 2-3 months ago or so, maybe a little bit longer. But it was sent out for public review for comment. The status of that particular document is that we are reviewing all the public comments received, and we received plenty of them. There's a lot of comments we received from our stakeholders. Those are being reviewed, responses are being prepared, and as soon as the responses are complete, some decisions can be made with respect to any changes that need to occur with that document, and it can get finalized. So stay tuned for that one. There was a lot of comments, a lot of work going into responding to those comments. Wanted to make sure that everything got carefully looked at. And so hopefully in the near future here, there'll be a decision on that and that can be released. But on the other hand, one of the things that we've been focusing on at DTSC concurrently is our attenuation factor study. And with respect to our attenuation factor study, one of the things we decided back, I think it was last year, was that we really needed to look at a California specific attenuation factor. We have EPA's attenuation factor that we had been using as a default because that was recognized as the best available science, but we wanted to look at something California specific as well. So DTSC took it upon themselves to prepare a study in the attempt to develop something California specific. And the status of that right now is that the study is complete. This study has gone to peer review and it's going through our UC system to get an academic peer review to make sure we get all the feedback we need to finalize the study. We have 5 staff from the UC system that are peer reviewing the report. Each has a specific task. We've received feedback from all of them except for one. The last one we're waiting for is the statistical analysis review. So we're having a statistician look at it. They're reviewing it. They're going to give us their feedback on the statistics that we use for the study. So as soon as we complete that, we'll be able to complete our study, finalize that, and then based on the results of the study, our executive management will have to take a look and decide what policy changes would be necessary. One thing of note, this study is not necessarily independent of the Water Board because I think there may be some confusion. The Water Board and DTSC are preparing a supplemental guidance. DTSC is preparing this attenuation factor study. And how are they interrelated? Well, they are independent, but they're complementary because as part of the supplemental guidance, the intent of the vapor intrusion work group that includes DTSC and the Water Board was to develop long-term an attenuation factor for California for both agencies to use. This study is just kind of it's front-loading that database that the Water Board and DTSC are jointly conducting. So they're somewhat independent, but at the same time they're complementary, and we're working with the Water Board to make sure that we are proceeding in a consistent manner. So Tasnif-Abassi, who is an engineer, senior engineer in our Cypress branch here in California, was the lead along with a couple of other of our staff on the study. He presented earlier this morning a presentation on the mechanics of the study, and he can be contacted. His information is here, his email address, for more information if you'd like to get some more details on that. So now I'd like to reintroduce Maryam Tasnif-Abassi, who is our Brownfield Coordinator, and she's going to talk about our voluntary agreements and Brownfield funding. Maryam?
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for giving us that excellent information, and thank you, Jean, for the introduction. Like Peter said, I am Maryam Tasnif-Abassi with DTSC, the Brownfield Development Manager, and I'm really excited about talking to everyone today about some of the innovations and new tools and approaches that we've been developing at DTSC to address impacted land and bring it to safer, higher, and better uses. One of the things that we've really been emphasizing is when you are interested in taking on a impacted property, a brownfield property, we have brownfield coordinators in every office and in every region to provide you with general information and give you guidance on how best to navigate your project if you bring it to us. We're able to discuss things on a high level and on a project-specific level. And once we get to the point where we assign a project team, we can even discuss specific project strategies with you. I'm always available to discuss broader issues and coordinate with the US EPA if needed, depending on the circumstances. And so even though talking to DTSC is not a new approach, it is something that we are emphasizing because we're finding more and more that having these upfront conversations has been really, really helpful, both for us when we take on a project and both for our external partners, because it reduces some of the mystery and some of the uncertainty that's generally associated with an environmental oversight process. Now, there's usually two ways to work with DTSC. We work through enforcement orders, and there are several different types of enforcement orders that we issue. But most of the work that we do in the brownfield space is more voluntary because we're not chasing after people who have created spills or have polluted the environment through their work processes. Generally, we're looking at a different approach, and these projects usually come to us through our voluntary agreements. Our standard voluntary agreement, which is the one that we've used the most within DTSC, that's been recently updated, same as our California Land Reuse and Revitalization Act agreement, which provides immunities and certain limited liability once the work is complete. We've also updated that. There's a prospective purchaser agreement that is the process of being updated that comes with a covenant not to sue, which is a little bit different than the CLARA agreement that I just talked about. And our newest agreement is our local agency agreement. For those of you who've been working in California for a while, you probably are familiar with the redevelopment agencies that were dissolved back in 2011. And with the dissolution of the redevelopment agencies, the protections that came to the redevelopment agency when taking on a cleanup and shouldering the burden of bringing a site back into, this phase of environmental restoration, those Polanco immunities went away with those redevelopment agencies. And with the local agency agreements, we've tied that into AB 440, which is the Gatto Act, that does provide Polanco-like immunities for agencies who take on the responsibility of cleaning up a site. So that was launched, I think, just about a month ago. So it's available. We haven't had our first agreement signed, but we are working with a couple of different cities in both Northern California and Southern California to get this one through. For specific circumstances, we also offer reimbursement agreements, which are a simple language contract. Now, we really encourage voluntary engagement. It is a fee-for-service process because we do need a funding source, but we have found time and time again that working cooperatively really does increase the efficiency of the process. And it is something that we're trying to update to better meet the needs of our stakeholders. One of the things that we've done to optimize our voluntary agreements is using a Lean Six Sigma process to evaluate our workload and try to seek out efficiencies for our process. When we went through this exercise, we realized that voluntary agreements represent a good 40% of our active workload for our program. After a very intense evaluation of the data, and I'll talk a little bit about it in some of my next slides, we set the goals to make timely decisions on all documents that come to us through voluntary agreements. And the goals in general were 75 days to complete work plans, 100 days for reports, and 150 days for cleanup plans. And the way we've been measuring the 75, 100, and 150 target days is from the day that we receive that document to the day that we approve that document. There are certain minor circumstances, I haven't seen it that often, where we end up rejecting documents, but this really is trying to get us to those approval points a lot faster. So this is kind of walks us through the process of the data sets that we looked at. So we looked at data from 2005 to mid-2017, and then we look at a shorter window from 2015 to 2017. We did a little bit of a soft implementation and then really rolled out a lot of our tools in 2019. And we're 6 months into the new year, but haven't had a chance to pull data. So our goal is 95% of all of our projects meeting these goals. And you can see that we see this upward trend generally for our top two categories where we're getting better and better at meeting those deadlines. With the cleanup plans, you see a little bit of a dip and a pickup just because the N for our cleanup plans is a lot low. So having one cleanup plan that goes a little slower has been driving our numbers down. But certainly it's something that we are working on, and looking at where we've landed in 2019, we're very encouraged that we are moving closer and closer to these goals of 95% achievement for just really serving our communities better by getting to the decisions a lot faster. Now, the reason why we've been able to decrease our timelines on these voluntary projects, as I showed in the last slide, is because we have been implementing a lot of changes in our work processes. So we've been encouraging scoping meetings, collaborative review, early public participation and engagement. You'll see two hyperlinks here, one to our quick reference guides. I think we have about 20 different quick reference guides that are one-page informational sheets that talk about the CLARA process, for example, or how to enter into an agreement. We've talked about PEAs, SSIs. I think we recently just released one on the remedial investigation process. So we have these quick reference guides that better outline our process, both for our internal users and for external users. And we're also keeping our website updated as often as is needed and creating more tools on a routine basis. Internally, we've had some infrastructure updates, which means sort of updating of some policies and procedures and templates. Template updates are happening a lot faster now. As we see issues, we don't wait. We go ahead and make those changes, and we hope that we are keeping ourselves up to date and relevant by doing this. There's been some changes to Envirostore, which is our data portal and the way we track and manage our data. And this ongoing data collection and reporting internally is really informing internal dialogues to support our management value chain a lot better, and also helping us with our external collaboration. And we really are trying to create more awareness of our tools and resources and these efficiencies that we've been putting into place to help better address these projects in California. Switching over from some of our project management facing tools and into funding, I wanted to talk about some of the funding that we have at DTSC to help with the work that's going on. For assessment, we have the Targeted Site Investigation Plus program. This is a program that in the past, I'd say about 15 years or so, we've been issuing this on an annual basis, where we invite people to apply for DTSC using the funds that come to us from EPA to do assessments and help with the environmental decision-making process when it comes to planning and redevelopment. Because of the pandemic, the targeted site investigation has been put on hold in the sense that we didn't go out for solicitation for applications this year. What we are doing is that we're looking at ways to expand the program and looking at different collaborations and partnerships. We've been thinking about perhaps having an affordable housing focus, or looking at creating some regional partnerships and maybe expanding the program to perhaps even implement cleanup plans, because traditionally it's just been for investigation. So we're really trying to go back to the drawing board and have more and more conversations with different partners in the municipal space and the nonprofit space to understand the needs and see what we can do to adjust that. Our goal is that we feel by talking to different stakeholders and potential users of our program, we'll be able to find innovative ways to expand the program and test them out outside of our traditional competitive process. And so we are, even though we didn't go out and solicit applications, we are doing sort of soft solicitations and having conversations to see what we can roll under and then come up with a more specific future plan of how we want to repackage the TSI program. Another pool of funding we have under assessment is the investigation site cleanup program. This is relatively new, and basically this is a loan program where anyone, even if they are considered to be a responsible party, can come to us to take out a low interest loan to conduct some investigation for their site. The concept is that you take a loan to explore the environmental conditions and determine if a redevelopment plan that you're considering is viable. If it turns out after the investigation is complete that redevelopment may not be viable because of the level of contamination found or the funding required to address the contamination or whatever reason that comes up, then up to 75% of that loan could be forgivable. And the ISCP, the Investigation Site Cleanup Program, I believe the interest rates are below 2%. Those are the two assessment programs. For cleanup, we've got the Revolving Loan Fund and the Cleanup Loans and Environmental Assistance to Neighborhoods Program, which we abbreviate as CLEAN. But on the next slide, I'm going to be talking about the Revolving Loan Fund, because that is money that we have that's expiring next year, and we really are trying to get these loans out as quickly as possible. The next one is the loan program that I mentioned, the Revolving Loan Fund program. This is open to public or private entities who have access to the site. Ownership is not required. There is the option to do grants for government agencies and nonprofits, but just because we haven't gotten a loan out in a long time, we're not able to do grants alone. But for a party who's eligible to take on a grant, we are currently entertaining the idea of doing 60% loan, 40% grant. So those are things to come in mind. For this particular program, you can't be responsible for the contamination and there can't be any existing enforcement orders. And you have to come in through the door with a cleanup plan already in place, just because that's the only way we'll know how much funding is going to be needed to put together the loan package. Although we have said if you're in the process of developing the cleanup plan, that's the best time to come and speak to us about the revolving loan, because we can arrange the timing such that upon approval of the cleanup plan, hopefully by then the money can be made available as well, and everyone involved in the project can hit the ground running on implementing the cleanup. So I think that was it for me for funding and voluntary programs. It's been a great experience to have been involved as a conference organizer. Now, one of the things that we have asked all of our speakers to do is try to answer this particular question at the close of their session. How does our work contribute to the resilience of California's communities? As a state, we are going through so many things, the pandemic, the fires. I mean, there's just so much going on that impacts us on a personal level and a broader level as members of this wonderful state. And I wanted to touch upon how DTSC's work contributes to the resilience of California's communities. We are, like Peter and I mentioned, trying to develop new tools that'll meet the needs of the state better. We are trying to adapt and evolve to better fit community needs. Going through the process of developing the California-based attenuation factor is just one of those ways that we are evolving and adapting. We heard what was being said and what was needed, and we thought, okay, this is a way that we can help. We are constantly and actively seeking opportunities for better partnerships and better collaboration so that we can not just focus on what we think is important to share, but understand how we can help with this, very intense and arduous process of land recycling. And I can speak on behalf of myself and Peter to say that we are fully committed to facilitating safe use and reuse of contaminated properties within a time frame that makes sense for all of us.
I just wanted to reiterate the commitment to helping everyone. Housing is a big issue these days. We at DTSC are very committed to working with our development community to make sure that we can do our part to streamline things, to make sure properties are safe, and to make the process as simple as possible without a whole lot of red tape to get clean properties so that we can build suitable homes for our communities.
Thank you, Peter. This brings us to the close of our presentation today. The last slide is our contact information. We're going to be having some office hours where you can have some dialogue with us if you have any questions on this presentation or any of our other presentations. Peter and I are both open at any time. You need to ask us anything, to just give us a call or drop us a line, and we'd love to chat with you. Jean?
Again, this brings the panel to a close. We thank Peter and Maryam for sharing what's new at DTSC, and really take advantage of meeting them and speaking to their colleagues by phone after the conference to start an ongoing dialogue with DTSC, so they're part of your projects and your success. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.